Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar on the topic of the role of AI in chemical and process manufacturing. I'm your host, Knud Lueth. I will introduce me and Yury as well here in a second. It's a 1-hour webinar that we have planned. We'll leave some time for Q&A. You can ask your questions anytime, and if you have problems, please use the chat button and let us know. We'll make the recording available to those who are signed up. And with that, quick introduction. I have been doing market research at IoT Analytics for industry and technology topics for a good 15 years now. And with me on the call today, I have the great pleasure of having Yury Gomez. She is Global Chief Commercial Officer for Process Manufacturing at Microsoft. And as such, drives a lot of the AI-related business for Microsoft in process industry, specifically chemicals, which we'll touch on quite a bit today, and also not only the go-to-market, but also the strategy, execution. You'll hear from her later and a lot more, I think. We are going to present some of the results of a new piece of research that we've done in process manufacturing. For those of you who don't know IoT Analytics, very quickly, we are a market research company. We produce market research on IoT, as the name suggests, but also on AI, cloud edge, and Industry 4.0. I have quite a bit of an industry focus in what we do. And just some examples of recent research that we've done. Industrial software. We just released a new generative AI market report. Lots of insight on the generative AI topic. There's an industrial AI report coming out as well later in the year. But don't want to get too deep into that. If you're familiar with us, then you may have seen some of the blogs, some of the pieces we've done on that. Today, we want to focus specifically on process industries. And as such, I want to, before we go into the research that we did together with Microsoft, and that was published recently, I want to set a little bit of the scene of both AI and process industries, and really starting from the top of what are we seeing and hearing in our research when it comes to those topics. So you may be familiar with this format, which we publish every quarter, which we call What CEOs Talked About. I've seen it shared quite a lot. It's a little bit of a busy chart. And for this webinar, we did a little bit of a special analysis. I asked the team to say, hey, can you look at a 1 year instead of a quarter by quarter comparison in general? Yeah. And if you look at what in CEOs and earnings calls, which is what this analysis is, said a year ago versus now, you see there are differences. And how to read this chart is the further it's on the right, the bigger the topic, the further it goes to the top, the more it's been growing over the last year. And so not surprisingly, in the last quarter, there were huge use tariff election discussions going on in earnings calls. Kind of expect that to continue, at least on the tariff side. And we've seen over the last 3 years now, this AI topic really rise. You can see it's almost it's the second biggest point on here. So AI has become like a key talking point for CEOs, and it continues to grow. Data centers specifically, we've seen in the last years grow because there's a lot of people who woke up to the idea of, oh, wow, there's a lot of data center demand that is unmet. That's why you also see some of the GPUs that go into the data centers that have come up. Some of the Gen AI topics are already back on the way back down, ChatGPT, for example. But we have new topics like agentic AI is coming up as a topic, and a few others that we'll talk about today. At the same time, reshoring from a manufacturing point of view, also a very interesting topic to follow, has been in various regions of the year, a topic for a good year or so now. And there are a ton more. So that's kind of the big picture. And then the next question that we ask is, okay, let's look at, okay, this is for all companies, not only manufacturers, not only process manufacturers. Let's look specifically at process manufacturing, and let's single out the chemical industry, because today we said we're going to look at that. So it's a bit of a busy slide. I hope it's understandable. We look at a bunch of these keywords, and we realize that a number of those topics are extremely prevalent with chemical CEOs. So the chemicals line here, essentially what you see here is everything is above the line, which means chemical companies discuss these topics more than the average company that you have listed as a public company. And specifically the topic of sustainability, energy, emissions, is really, really prevalent in these discussions. And you can see, I'll get to it in a minute, get to why and how that is. And then you have a bunch of topics that are very kind of chemical specific. For example, the move from petroleum-based to bio-based chemicals is something that's been discussed. The moving to low carbon chemicals, the carbon capture technologies on the same time. So these are regulation-related EPA discussions. These are things that you see in the chemical industry, and we also do we're actually our team is in a process of kind of doing a double click on these to kind of uncover what are all the discussions behind it. I can't show you all of that, but it shows you that chemical companies have a lot of topics on top of their mind. And just to give you an example, one of the largest chemical company is Dow Chemicals. And this is taken directly from their strategy presentation. Dow says, we want to be the most innovative, customer-centric, inclusive, and sustainable material science company in the world. And you can see here on the slide that they shared as part of their Investor Day presentation last year, innovation plays a very key role, mostly on the product side, and you can see the kinds of things they talk about, including reduced carbon, bio-based, and circular products. You cannot even see on the customer-centric side how digital transformation and innovation plays a key role here. And then on the right-hand side, obviously, the whole topic of sustainability. And for example, the CEO has said our operating discipline is supported by a strong digital foundation that is complemented by more than 2 decades of traditional AI deployment and now the addition of generative AI. And that kind of gets us a little bit started and into the direction of, hey, AI is also starting to play a key role as we're looking at the strategy of a big chemical company like Dow. It's not surprising because I'm going to jump back to one of our pieces of research we've done. This is a survey we've done every year for the last 6 years with manufacturers. Some of you that have followed past webinars and other things we've done may have seen this slide already. We haven't got one for 2026 yet, but I do remember when we first did this survey in 2019, and I do remember we say, oh, there's some people who really say AI is a top 10 priority for them, or top 5. And it was very, very few. It was like 2 or 3 out of 200 or something. And now in 2025, it's like some people that I've showed this chart are like, isn't it the #1 priority now? And it actually is, depending on how you ask the question, because we asked the question here around, I need to see actually what the question, we don't have the question exactly here. We asked, what are your manufacturing technology priorities? And nobody wants to say cybersecurity is not the #1 priority these days. Hence, it shows us as #1. But the big mover really is AI. And I wouldn't be surprised that if it moves up further, based on some of the research that I'll show you in a minute, but also a lot of the discussions that I've had. And one of the recent examples is a German chemicals company, Covestro. Here is again, one of their most recent kind of big picture strategy slide. They have 3 big priorities: becoming the best of who they are, driving sustainable growth, and becoming fully circular. And you see this thing going across is the topic of advancing digitization. If you double click here, there was a recent interview with the CEO who was very clear in saying, we need to hit the digital accelerator, especially for our industry, which is at risk of falling behind. Many companies are still far from exploiting the great potential of AI, which can increase productivity by almost 20% on average. And he goes on to say, at Covestro, we are doing everything we can to seize this opportunity. That's why we recently included AI in our corporate strategy. We see it as a unique driver of innovation and engine of growth, and want to make it a fundamental part of our way of working, decision-making, and creating value. And I think that shows you that AI is really a kind of CEO top-down driven topic. It's coming into these strategies, and it's seen as something that is fundamentally changing the way business is done, and these companies can think of it. Not, I would argue, not every company is as outspoken, as clear as Covestro is, the Covestro CEO has made it here, but it's a pretty good example of what is going on in the CEO's mind of a chemical company. We have a couple of other examples we could share with you from our earnings call analysis. So here, for example, is a company called Minerals Technologies. They talk a little bit more about traditional AI. Over the past few years, we've deployed several AI-based tools in our operations to aid areas like predictive maintenance and process optimization. So those are things that we've covered predictive maintenance as a research topic for 7 or 8 years now. We've seen this specifically in process industries quite a bit in various degrees. Brenntag, which I think is the biggest chemical distributor there is, very specific, also going beyond that, saying our achievements so far include, among others, the further successful rollout of our digital sales channel called Brenntag Connect, the further rollout of our customer growth engine, as well as first use cases for our digital demand forecasting. We're, besides the further rollout, also testing a suite of autonomous AI agents to support and simplify tasks and customer services. So this agentic topic that we just said, here's an example of a CEO saying, well, you know what, we're doing this agentic in customer services right now. And then maybe lastly, I want to share a quote from DuPont. Their view or their discussion of AI is completely different at this point. They're a little bit more going into that direction of, hey, AI is actually a demand generator because we are serving industries that are growing because of what's going on in AI. And so they kind of have this end market view where the electronics and industrial segment saw high growth, which continue to benefit from strong demand for advanced node chips and AI enabling technologies where their chemicals play a big role. So that's kind of the other side from a chemical point of view, delivering to industries where AI chips and related equipment are growing quite a lot. So that's kind of I would say the CEO view. So very high level. I hope we established a little bit of hey, this is a big topic, different things going on from our research. Now let's go and zoom into process manufacturing. I hopefully don't need to spend too much time on this because I think we do have quite an educated audience. But I think it's very important to establish that discrete manufacturing and process manufacturing are two very separate and different things. We've been covering both for a long time, and discrete manufacturing at the end of the day handles discrete products like cars, for example, as you see here, structured BOM, step-by-step assembly using PLCs. The machines and assets used are 5 to 20 years maximum, whereas in process manufacturing, it's continuous processes, uses so-called DCS systems, SCADA systems. The lifespan of these assets is much longer, hence the turnaround takes a lot longer. That's why you often argue that these industries are less innovative because their assets just stand there for longer. And so that's the lens we need to take on as we're discussing AI and process manufacturing. Good. So I hope that lays a little bit the foundation. I encourage everyone to ask questions as we go along, questions about this, questions about other things. The main focus of today's webinar is a new report that we have produced together with Microsoft, which can be downloaded from this link. Perhaps someone from the team can share the link also in the chat here. We surveyed 120 executives in various process industries, chemicals being a big one, also metals, pulp and paper. And the report, I think, does give out quite a bit of details of what we see happening. We also complemented this by selected interviews that we conducted as part of this. And some of that we will share today. So that's kind of the basis for the discussion with Yury. And with that, I would say we're going into that discussion. I will share the first finding of the report, and then the idea is to go a little bit back and forth and discuss why is that, what are we seeing. So one of the results that you see in the report is we asked what technologies are you deploying? Have you deployed? And are you going to deploy? So the idea is to say something like process automation in most has been fully deployed or partially deployed, and the number of pilots or other developments is relatively low at this point. So fairly mature, even though I would, there would easily people on this call who would argue there's a lot of innovation still happening there. But if you really look at the big picture, then these things are more established. At the bottom of the chart, you find things that are AI related. So AI-driven process optimization R&D, quality control system, co-pilots, and digital assistants. Rollout status, very low when it comes to full or partial deployment right now, obviously, for various reasons. But, and I think that's the big takeaway here from my point of view, if you look at this, it's easily 70, 80% for all of these are what we would consider trialing. So trialing AI either in a proof of concept or pilot phase, smallest still. So the way to look at it is first you explore it, then you develop it, then you go to a pilot, and if it's successful, you go further to deploying it. A large share of companies are trying different types of AI right now that we surveyed, and to varying degrees. I'll give you one more quote from the research that we did. We talked to a large steel company. They said to us 6 to 7 years ago, we began by installing smart IoT sensors and then later integrated standalone system using advanced wireless and also private 5G technologies, which laid the foundation for a networked ecosystem. And this change from isolated systems to interconnected networks has been crucial for AI-driven solutions in our company now. So I think that also tells a little bit the story where you can see some of the things that were mentioned here are a little bit more mature already. But if you want to have AI, you got to have some of these systems in place and make sure they're not siloed, but they actually come together for AI. At this point, I want to bring in you, Yury, because I think you've done a lot of work with different companies in process industries, and perhaps you want to say hi to the audience. There's a ton of stories behind this data, but I would love to hear from you, like based on your experience with customers. Does this picture align with what you're seeing and hearing as well?
Thank you, Knud. And yes, hello to the audience. I am Yury Gomez. I am the global lead for process manufacturing industries. I've been in multiple industries for more than 20 years of my career, all the way from chemicals to pharma to CPG companies and pharmaceuticals. And then over the last 4 or 5 years, I have been supporting a lot of the process manufacturing companies for industrial automation and AI transformation through Microsoft. So this is a fascinating topic today for me to talk about to the audience as to what we are seeing with the advancement of AI and what it means for the transformation, especially as Knud said, in an industry that has been, number one, it has so many old assets, it's typically brownfields that we have to deal with. But where are we going? So I think this is fascinating. I think it aligns very well to where I see talking to a lot of customers, not only in the chemical industry, petrochemical, also in steel manufacturing, pulp and paper, cement, especially as well. So all of these companies are really going through, I would say, through a massive discovery of, wow, AI is here, is advancing super quickly. And some of them are not really ready to how can we implement AI. So as you will see even in other slides that we are going to discuss, the data shows that AI is going very fast. And it really is a call out for manufacturers to say, let's get started very quickly. This is driving impact. We have, lots of examples that we can share along this conversation. And as you've seen some of the quotes from Knud, where companies are finding themselves on the approach, the impact they are seeing is critical for the business. I think, to me, it's fascinating because many years ago, we started with automation and IoT connectivity. As we saw from the last quote, it's like it starts with data connectivity to really unlock the power of AI. And what we're seeing here is like, wow, okay, these companies are saying, okay, now we are very mature to some extent in connectivity and sensors. What else can we do differently? Because now IoT and sensors become almost like the common base for, okay, we already know that. We want to unlock the next generation of value for these enterprises. And AI is here to dramatically show the way that these companies can change. However, of course, we see disparate data, and this is very related to readiness. So as we are going to continue exploring some of this data, we will continue these key points. And please feel free to put your questions in the chat. This is more to help you understand what we are seeing to the data and how we can help. So it's as meaningful to us to talk than meaningful to us to hear from you, to have a very meaningful conversation as well.
Yury, I could ask you 10 follow-up questions here. I see the chat is already lighting up a little bit. There was I prefer we go a little bit through some of the findings and then kind of see where the discussion goes. There was a specific question about where can we find this chart. We actually have in the report, we've published a slightly simplified chart of this, which is why you will not be able to find this exact chart in the report if you're looking for it. Just to get this message a little bit clearer, but I wanted to share the in-depth chart here. So have to wait until the recording or take a screenshot if you want to have this exact chart. I think I see a bunch of things in the chat as I am glancing over. I see already that people are discussing where and how and so on. And I think that's perhaps the bigger discussion I want to have with you, Yury, of where are those AI projects happening and what are the top benefits of AI? So to summarize, from our point of view, ask several questions in the research of like where do you what are the benefits in R&D, what are the benefits in operation and manufacturing, and also in our discussions. The first thing we heard in R&D is reducing manual data processing, and whether this is extracting data from scientific papers or whatever it is, having AI kind of go through larger data sets and then helping to then drive that into R&D is something that we've heard over and over again as a top benefit in R&D. The second thing is to actually integrate different data sources from experiments, trials, some external databases, and then finding a way to actually integrate this. And lastly, the third point we heard is perhaps not surprisingly, detecting the patterns, the trends, the anomalies with greater precision. I think I will share in a minute a case study where we went a little bit more in depth with a global chemicals company of how they are doing it. And they very clearly said, you know, for us in R&D, it's about new formulations, finding them faster, going faster to market with that, and you really using AI to do that. I will quickly go through the other two and then we can have a discussion. So on the plant side, intelligent plant, we hear this over and over again, using AI for process optimization. And this can be for process parameters. I know there's a bit of a discussion around like, okay, are we really going to fully autonomous plants, or is there at least an operator for now in there? But there's a huge discussion going on whether we're going to that, but also in terms of process optimization of supporting processes that are in place. Quality control, machine vision systems, wherever it makes sense, have come in quite a lot, and that's a big use case we've specifically also seen in the discrete side of industry. And it's got to be also said, I think the predictive maintenance, predicting equipment failures, especially in process industries where the assets are super high value. If an asset fails, you easily have a huge sum of money that you could actually have as cost against it, or if something breaks within that, let's say in a steel mill or with very specific equipment, it's a very big topic that we've also heard a lot. And finally, when we think of the connected worker that's out there, And here also Gen AI comes in quite a bit in terms of troubleshooting equipment issues. We've seen on our side, also outside of this piece of research, a number of companies that have come up with equipment troubleshooting chatbots and things that are going through the tons and tons of manuals that are out there. Optimizing the workload generally and that scheduling. I think that's typically an AI and topic where AI displays a role. And then finally, also here, ensuring the consistent quality control. And you are probably much closer to some of these companies that are implementing this than we are from a research point of view. So I would love to hear what kind of use cases you are seeing taking off and how they are perhaps different in some of these industries.
Yeah, great. It's great. As a context, Knud, so these are just, 3 key buckets that, we are seeing a lot of impact for AI. The reality is that Microsoft, we are really helping these companies to change with AI transformationally across the entire enterprise. But just to, stay in these 3 categories here, I can tell you in R&D, for example, I think this is one of the biggest pillars and domains where we are seeing significant impact of AI. For example, we are working with a company called ScienceCo, who decided to develop their own internal R&D databases and apply Gen AI and makes a lot of information that historically has been very hard to capture, to understand, to evaluate. And that really is what they call their Genie, right? An R&D assistant powered by AI to give control and semi-autonomous controls to scientists in the lab, to engineers, to really have a better way to naturally ask questions to this interface about accelerating new product developments, asking for what are the molecules of the future, how can they really enable the scientists to accelerate this cycle of discovery, which typically can take 5 years. Especially these companies who are focused significantly on bringing new material development and accelerating the pipeline of R&D. It's super important for them to really apply AI, apply technology, apply cloud, because this is the future. I think especially in Europe, a lot of companies that I work with are under the pressure of meeting the 2030 sustainability goals. And then all of this really combines. How do we accelerate molecules? In the chemical industry, for example, a lot of these customers have to reformulate a lot of their product innovations, especially if they have very hazardous materials such as PFAS and others, right? So we are seeing the impact in R&D significantly to transform and accelerate how R&D is done, how molecules are developed. At Microsoft, actually, we understand the R&D is not just even about, one platform of just R&D assistant, but it's really bringing a suite of applications across R&D, connecting your data, for example. There is a lot of data in machines, the same as in the plant, right? So there are machines, there are analytical equipment. We're bringing data, documentation, literature reviews, patents, etc. We're bringing this into platforms that are accelerating the future of R&D. Bayer, for example, is another example. They also develop R&D assistants to advance the cycle and productivity for R&D. In intelligent plants, we are working with a ton of customers across all the spectrum of process manufacturing industries. And the key power here where really is fascinating. I think the plant has been one area where historically, there is all the operators and it has been a forgotten space of innovation. But it doesn't have to be like that anymore because now we are really focusing on how can we apply AI for this human-centric approach of innovation where the connected worker really is at the heart of automation, developing productivity, process optimization. We are bringing safety, right? So how do we really apply Vision AI to ensure the safety of workers, especially for process manufacturing? This is significant. Chemical plants are hazardous environments. Steel manufacturing are very difficult environments to work with inside the plants. So how can we really prioritize the health and safety of the workers? So this is one of the huge impacts. The other one is about assets. As you mentioned, Knud, earlier, chemical plants, steel plants, etc. These are asset-intensive companies. And as such, there is a lot of data that historically has been collected and is staying in historians unused. So that journey then goes into how do we use IoT intelligence, for example, to capture even data that is not being captured historically? How can we retrofit these plants and then migrate data to the cloud? How do we connect this data in the plant? And then apply AI. I think, the journey is that connectivity, application of AIs, and then scaling across plants. We are doing this. Dow is one example you mentioned earlier, on their strategic digital transformation. We've been working with Dow for more than a decade, transforming them from this journey of connectivity to employing various use cases across the enterprise to digitize. And now with the advent of AI, they are really innovating, giving co-pilots, giving AI assistance to their workforce at scale, where that is a worker in the plant or a worker in supply chain. There are so many key decisions that AI can enable every person in a company to just work better. I think probably not here, right? But supply chain cannot be really seen in isolation. Every company, every chemical company also is responsible for their supply chain transformation. And where we are seeing a significant impact of AI also is unleashing this end-to-end enterprise collaboration, where now there is more visibility of data across different departments, breaking these barriers and silos, and actually being able to really drive impact for meaningful decisions, especially as we said, if we go back to the first slide that you shared, why CEOs are talking about agentic AI. And the reason is that today, we have transitioned very, very quickly from the conversation of generative AI, which we have demonstrated significant value, to the next phase, agentic AI, because then that really is the mechanism where we empower every worker to start automating their processes, their tasks, right? And be in the loop for the decision making. So I mean, it's incredible. I can tell you in customer service, probably one more example there. One company we are working with, Cemex. We have also been transforming them in plant operations, connectivity, etc. But just to give you one example in customer service, typically sales reps would take a lot of months or weeks wasted connecting with their customers to understand all the product availability that they had, across all the SKUs. So there were difficult conversations, and unless the sellers were very well trained in this data and products, they could sell effectively. So Cemex decided to actually use generative AI, right, and agentic AI to say, how do we empower these sellers with better ways of knowing the product quickly, asking the questions, and guiding them to really have these conversations with customers. And as a key result, they're now able to sell more, to drive more value, and to deliver better customer excellence. So there are many, many amazing use cases. I could talk the full day here, but just a few stories there for the audience here to understand where we're driving impact.
No, those are excellent points, and one of the, for me at least, biggest surprise for me, as someone who doesn't cover process industries all day, was I thought that AI, an intelligent plant, was kind of the big thing, and then when I realized, when we did the piece of research, that especially in chemicals, R&D and this whole formulating new products, and what a game changer AI, from the discussions we've had, can be in R&D specifically for chemicals. I assume probably maybe a little bit less for industries where the products don't have as many variations, but I think you shared some good examples just there on how some companies that are doing it. that to me was at least one of the biggest takeaways. It's also very different again to some of the discrete, where yes, there also AI plays a role in R&D, but there it's about changing the design in your CAD drawings on discrete products. Here it's really about formulations and coming up with new molecules or at least using them in a different form. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you are absolutely right. I mean, I think there are so many cases of R&D beyond the molecular discovery. We can still apply simulation. For example, simulating how the design of a steel piece for a big project in the ocean or construction properties that will look like. But I think molecular design is one of the key advances that is fascinating with AI.
I've seen a few questions in the chat. It would help us a little bit if you would, if you have specific questions, to specifically use the Q&A button. I think we will go there first when we go to questions. We will also go screen through the chat, but I'm just saying it's perhaps a bit easier to have it in a more structured way there. Yeah, here's another quote from one of our interviews. We're thinking hard about the best use cases for AI. I think we've established that already. And in this case, the company in the UK we have here said particularly around maintenance and reliability of machines, quality inspection, and trying to improve human judgment wherever that makes sense. So obviously everyone has a slightly different approach to it. Another finding from the survey was obviously we established that AI is mostly in the trialing phase, as we called it. But when we look at the data that we have, it was very clearly visible that North American companies were at least further in what they said. We are already rolling it out. We're at least partially deploying it. And then you could see that chemicals and pulp and paper in that data set also looked a little bit further ahead. Company size didn't really have a big difference, which surprised me a bit because I kind of thought that big corporates might be ahead because they have slightly deeper pockets. But you are based in North America, Yury. Why are North American companies ahead?
Yeah, this is a fascinating finding here. And yeah, no, I do think, it's natural for North America to be ahead for various reasons. I think, I mean, everybody knows that the, big boom of AI started here in North America. The biggest technologies companies are also here in North America. Hence, the proximity to where technology, the big players are is one natural point of why, it starts here, because then they have faster access. Also, especially because, as probably the audience knows, AI requires a lot of processing, computing power. And so the investments in data center, there have been massive investments in North America. But I think the good news is that these deployments have been really spreading super quickly in the last year, as you probably have heard from our CEO, Satya Nadella, investing almost in every country that he visits, billions of dollars. Our partnership with, multiple players out there for accelerating these investments in getting data center readiness. So that's one. The other one is evidently, so if we look into Asia, Pacific, and in Europe also, there have been other conflicts, right? So I think if we go back to the very early findings that you say, what are CEOs talking about today, is because these macroeconomic and political factors are, of course, impacting some other countries and regions more so than even North America itself. Yes, in North America, we talk a lot about political and tariffs and all of that as factors that will influence developments and investments. But of course, I think the ones that live even more closely is the European teams in Asia Pacific countries, where now they're really closer to tariffs, to war, to so many other things that are developing. And so all of these factors is pretty much, one of the interesting points of why. But as we are approaching really development and investments into AI, what we're seeing actually now massively is more and more European countries are coming to the game. Asia Pacific, especially in India, it's continuing to invest a lot. So it's just a matter, it's a lagging factor, but I think it's more like, let me make sure that North America is achieving the value of AI and everybody's following, right? As any curve that you probably have seen with other technologies. There is always the early adopters and then the followers and so on. So
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are my key insights there.
No, and I fully agree with that. I would perhaps even add one other point, which is right now in Europe, business sentiment in general is a bit lower than it is in North America. And I think that might be also one of the reasons why budgets for new technologies like AI are perhaps a little bit looser in North America than they are specifically in Europe. I'm based in Germany. There are a number of reasons why the German industry isn't going so well right now. And so I think that might be another factor to add here. Adding to that, something we've seen in other research, not only in AI, also elsewhere before, where North America has an innovation mindset in general, and at least speaking for Europe and Germany specifically, tend to be a little bit more cautious, also in reporting that we've done something already to a large degree. Having said that, we did talk to we talked to two European companies actually as part of the in-depth interviews, and they, at least one of them, was fairly far ahead when it comes to that. I will share one story here in a minute. Good. Look, we already touched on Gen AI. We didn't really make the distinction between Gen AI and AI, but I couldn't talk about, we couldn't do a webinar on AI these days without talking about Gen AI, and specifically having Microsoft on here. So the Gen AI adoption status that we asked was, 23% of the respondents said, hey, we are using or actively exploring Gen AI. 57% were like kind of looking at it and considering it, and 20% said, no, we're not doing it. And for those that said they were doing it, they mostly mentioned this process optimization topics. Sustainability was a big topic. Product design played a role. We talked about that already, including Gen AI and predict. It's always, for me, as someone who's looked at predictive maintenance, a lot of time I kind of struggle really how Gen AI plays in, but I even understand that some of those predictive maintenance companies are coming up with chatbots and other things that add to the workflow, so I can understand it now. And demand forecasting and so on. And so perhaps a couple of quotes here again from those interviews. One is we talked to a chemicals company, and the digitization director said, we've already rolled out 2 Gen AI-based chatbot solutions globally. One provides real-time guidance to operators, helping novice operators during startup and shutdown by giving step-by-step instructions on SOPs, eliminating the need for multiple back and forth phone consultations. And the other solution assists quality operators who may have forgotten the sample preparation in the lab or something by instantly providing the required steps when prompted. So that's one perspective. And the other perspective is clearly we are not ready for AI yet. We lack expertise. We hear that a lot as one of the key challenges. We simply don't have the teams that know how to do it. And we first need to lay the data foundation. I think this is something that's come out in a lot of our research over the last year, I should say. Really this kind of idea of, hey, the data has to be in place if you want to do AI, and companies just simply don't. They have a lot of data silos. And I think those are two of the kind of quotes that come from that. Yeah, Yury, I mean, you are representing Microsoft. You are representing a company that is invested in the company that perhaps made Gen AI mainstream. What do you have to say to this?
Yeah, no, this is fascinating, and I think this is, represents really the reality, right? I think even AI, if we really look at what it means for every person in the world beyond just manufacturing companies, different people are at different levels. The reality is that it requires AI skilling and AI readiness. And if we really move to the enterprise, right? So 20%, the dark phase, I will call it, is because, to be honest, to me, for every technology that has come to the world to be revolutionary, and just knowing that really we launched the biggest, products of AI just 2 years ago to today, this is massive. We're saying that 80% already using AI and experimenting and looking to scale. That's amazing in less than 2 years. And then another 20% are saying like, well, we're not exploring. my conversations with a lot of customers, I'm going to say this, is that to scale and to really be ready, you got to really have an enterprise-wide strategy. It's not about every individual in your company trying to say, hey, I want to try AI. They need really the C-level support, the management support to say this is part of the corporate strategy. Do number one, AI skilling. It requires a lot of change management. I think one of the findings in the IoT analytics report here is also about flexibility, and pretty much is requiring all the interdisciplinary approach of C-level executives and across functions of enterprises and companies to come together to design the policies. How are they going to, number one, manage AI deployments responsibly? How are they going to skill their people? And what are the key business use cases that align to deploying AI? So I think one key takeaway is it's not about just deploying AI for the simplicity. Oh, wow, Gen AI can give me a summary of anything. No. Or agentic AI can, if I tell just do this for me. No. You have to ask the key question is what's the business value that I want to drive? Where are we going directionally as a business? What are those business goals and strategies that we have to focus on to deliver top line and bottom line growth? And then based on those, then say, how can I apply Gen AI and agentic AI to maximize the value in these buckets? And I think that is, the strategic change that I suggest companies start to embrace to really not only unlock that 20% of the people that are in that dark phase, but even those that are still just experimenting. Because I think, so I've been in many multiple conferences with C-level executives. And one of the conversations that we've had is well, now we are experimenting at scale, but we recognize that we got to build the policies. And so the key takeaway is if you don't know what policies should you implement because you're new to this technology, you have to understand that you are better off partnering with companies such as Microsoft and other technology partners that we work with closely. Embracing, change management. We also even just work with, say, EY, PwC, McKinsey, and many other innovators that we do strategy sessions together. So you don't have to do this journey alone, and that's one of the key challenges for a lot of companies, that they think they have to know it all. And then lastly, there we also have a set of guidelines on what it means for doing implementing AI responsibly. We have guidelines for ethical principles, responsible AI, and how all of this comes together. So I encourage you to, work with us if you are not, but I don't think you have to suffer doing this alone.
Well said. I'm looking at time and I realize we are approaching the last 12 minutes. Before we go to Q&A, I did want to share at least what was for me one of the highlights of this piece of research, which was we called it a case study, and you can read it when you download the paper in a little bit more depth than what I'm talking about here. But I think this company that we talked to, which we will not disclose which company it is, I think a lot of the things that you just brought up, and you were not part of this discussion, in terms of what makes a company successful, I think this company has done, and I would think it's quite far ahead. So from the discussions we've had and a little bit of extra research we've also done, this company actually started with a dedicated digital unit for AI and digital topics, I think about 5 years or 6 years back, which I think laid a little bit the foundation of having individual people and skills in-house that can actually make things happen. They've over time always had a budget available for investing into digital capabilities. And what I think was quite interesting when discussing with them, they've always had this local innovation mindset where they encourage very much innovation in individual plants at individual sites and making that work. And an example of that we found was there was someone that said, I came up with an AI-based chatbot for operator onboarding in 2023. And I never imagined that this project would become so significant and viral within the company, which is my understanding. This chatbot, that this one person at a local site in Spain is actually rolled out now globally, or at least significantly, which I think is a very good starting point. The second things we discussed for this company is how do you actually manage that data? Yury, you talked about the AI foundation, the data foundation needs to be there. In this case, and maybe this may be obvious to some, this company said, well, first of all, we're separating out our control data stream, so everything that goes to the DCS, from everything, all the non-control data. And then the non-control data goes directly into what we've built, an enterprise data lake. And we did this research kind of not looking at, I believe they might be using a Microsoft data lake, but they could also use another one. But they're feeding this non-control data, and even the control data that first goes to is stored in a historian. Even that is continues to getting uploaded into an enterprise data lake that acts as a single source of truth. The quote here is, we've integrated historian data, supply chain data, SAP data, IoT data, third-party data to sanitize and trusted structure. So rigorous data quality assessment and cleansing this data lake serves as the single source of truth for the organization. And the person we talked to really was very clear. It's so important to have this as the basis. Then we talked about where do you actually use AI? We already touched on a lot of this today. First, in product formulations. Second, operator chatbots, vision control, and asset failure. I would say those are very classical cases. We already touched on them. Example, our AI-powered vision control for EHS detects safety violations, such as contractors entering a hazardous zone without a life vest or without the necessary certification or whatever is required. And then we also asked, in generally, what are the results so far? The person we talked to shared with us that, hey, first of all, our demand forecasting has really improved, much more accurate. Secondly, this whole new molecule development, 50% faster time to market. I think we would, the discussion was around, actually might have that as a quote, from 12 to 18 months down to 7 to 8 months. And then this whole topic of, hey, if we have some things where you're trying to fix an asset, you instead of searching for the answer in some manuals for days, we've had cases where we've been able to retrieve the knowledge through a chatbot in seconds. So I think that perhaps gives a bit of an example of how it potentially could look like. Now, I want to go to questions. And I don't know, Yury, if you want to comment on this, but I'll actually pull up the questions that have come in, because I think a bunch of them have already come in.
Yeah, let's go to the questions. I think that is a fair use of time, given just 7 minutes here.
Yeah. And you've also seen, I mean, if you want to tackle some, there have been so I will go. So I asked to please use the Q&A button. So I'll go there first. Biggest chemical production happens in China. Why do you think you haven't identified them in your research? Okay, so I guess this question is mostly for me. I'm actually not clear what the person means, but we haven't identified them because we have. I will pass on that question because I'm not entirely sure. Perhaps if the person can clarify what do they mean by why we haven't identified. We didn't talk about China specifically. And we have APAC and China as part of this sample. So we'll go to the chat. There was a chat question I think I saw earlier about going even beyond agents, I think going towards AGI. What is the future of, what's the future of ASI? Does it mean AGI? Because the person just said AGI before that. What's the future of AGI in chemical manufacturing? Or does it mean ASI?
Yeah, I'm not clear about what they mean by the acronym, so it's very difficult to give an opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking AGI, ASI. So if the person is there and can clarify, that would be great.
Okay. Also realized that I didn't actually pull up the final slide. Let me just do that here in a minute. Yury, have you spotted a question?
Okay, I see that. Artificial superintelligence. which for us is so yeah. So can you say what is the full questions for
I think the
ASI?
question is what is the future of artificial superintelligence and so I mean another question is perhaps to say what does this look like in 10 years from now if we get there? Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Thank you for the person asking this question. Look, I think we have demonstrated where technology is evolving rapidly, right? So artificial intelligence is just where we are today. And then, a ramification of that is generative AI and then agentic AI. Even this year is going to be more vision AI. As you know, autonomous vehicles, for example, in transportation, even the chemical companies, how can you use autonomous vehicles to transport chemicals without, any driver? So there is so much opportunity to unlock on the future of manufacturing, the future of distribution, the future of molecular design. To me, I think it is unraveling. I think this truly is a remarkable period of creation. I think to me is now we are going to advance human capacity. Even historically, scientists and engineers have been deemed super smart people in the process manufacturing industry. I think now we are going to actually be able to even get more out of them, because typically just R&D takes years of the brain of a person to come with hypotheses and thinking. And now we are giving them agentic AI and technology to do this faster. So imagine how triple smart they can be, with all of these solutions. In manufacturing, of course, we are looking more. I think there was a question there that I can connect this to, right, into the future of this, is advancing from AI and agentic to give every worker these capabilities, human in the loop, where we have, of course, very clear processes for how to distill, do fractionated distillation, whatever process in chemicals or steel, iron melting, smelting, whatever it is. But also really connecting this, right? So it's now connecting the function, so nothing has to be done in isolation, empowering every individual to do more things intelligently, to free their capabilities to do more things of value added, work for companies. So the future is just bright. I think I've never seen it, brighter than what it is going to be.
Good. We have 3 minutes left. I would like to encourage you to give us also feedback. So there will be a survey shared in the chat. 1 minute, if you could fill it out. We always strive to make things better. Yury, next question. The challenge we are facing is that companies do not commit to big resources investments, as the value is often not easy to quantify. What is your experience making value very quantifiable to convince management?
Yeah, no, this is a wonderful question, and I go back to the key principles to have in mind, and going back to the chart of why some companies are seeing value and why other ones are still in the dark. It's because you really have to start with the business value. No one better than you as a customer or as the head of your operation unit can say, like, let's say quality management. If you can say, look, if I achieve more yield in my capacity, or if I just run continuously or I know when my asset is about to fail, so that I can always continuously manufacture my product, or if I can always assure quality almost 100% instead of 80% of times, right? Start with that business objective in mind, and then say, how can we apply AI? And I think when you do that, then you can say, oh, wow, with AI, I know I can predict instantaneously. I can bring that right operators. I can bring that right people. I can bring all of this. Then you quantify, right? Then you quantify this value. Now I can send my material every day instead of every 2 days to my customer. I can unlock more revenue opportunity. I can bring more customers because I have more yield and more capacity. So all of that has to be transferred to value. So I think it's connecting the business goals to AI as the enabler.
Good. We have pretty much reached the top of the hour. And so I would say we close it here. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Download the paper if you want to read more. I probably have already. I don't think I need to do it again. Yury, I think we filled the hour with a lot of different points. I'm sure there's people who say we should go more deep here, more deep there. Feel free to reach out to Yury or me on LinkedIn if you want to have a double click. Also letting you know that we have more webinars planned this year on other manufacturing industries and other industries. Well, what for me, I would say, Yury, final words. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the insights, and I look forward to further discussions in the future.
Thank you, Knud, and thank you to the audience as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.